Erev Tov, Kfar Saba, Boker Tov in Houston. Hello to our friends from Croatia and Kuwait. We have a global audience today for an amazing program about cooperation in space. My name's Wayne Firestone. I'm the Executive Director of the America-Israel Friendship League, and we are thrilled to be back with our partners from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with a program that really allows us to expand our imagination and maybe learn a little bit about science and technology at the same time. We have a blue ribbon panel of experts that are in the know, that can share about space and space exploration in a very first-person narrative. So we're going to move right into the program. We know we have a global audience of people calling from all over. We love to see how you engage, and we hope to have a little bit of time. And maybe you could just put into the sidebar your own interest in space and what brought you to our episode today. If you have a favorite moment in the history of space exploration, either from the United States or from Israel, please let us know. If you're like me, a kid who grew up in Florida watching Cape Canaveral liftoffs and being in rocketry clubs, you know that there is a long way to actually make everything work, and we have a group of people here today who are part of that effort. I am thrilled that we're going to start with some insights. The way we're going to divide this today is have three opening presentations that will sort of frame how America and Israel have gotten into the collaborative process that we are at today. And then we're going to hear from four different ventures that are with entrepreneurs that are doing things in space that couldn't even be imagined even just a few years ago. So I'm going to start with our colleague, Dr. Andy David, who's the Director of Innovation, Entrepreneurship, and Technology at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He is the former Consul General from San Francisco that also serviced the Silicon area region, so knows a lot about the technology and the startup phenomenon that's happening out there, as well as in Startup Nation. He's also served in Chicago, Hong Kong, and in Azerbaijan. Andy, as we like to call you, Dr. David, as others call you, tell us about this fascinating connection you have between science, diplomacy, and entrepreneurship.
Thank you very much, Wayne. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I feel very privileged and honored to participate in this wonderful program. And I want to thank you, the America-Israel Friendship League, for the work that you do, not just today, but every day. So as you said, I'm a diplomat. I'm in the business of hope and the business of optimism. And as part of my role, I deal with economic diplomacy, or recently we describe it more as innovation diplomacy. Basically, it's about international collaborations, international relations, but using technology to make those collaborations stronger and more fascinating. One of the areas that we definitely are involved and are looking to be even more involved is what we call emerging technologies. Emerging technologies are described as the cutting edge of technologies, things like quantum computing, artificial intelligence, rare earth elements, and of course, space technology. We all are very much aware of the technological race between nations, between regions, between countries, and what is a better way for close allies to work together than in those areas of technology, and especially the emerging technologies. So today it's about space, and space is a very special area because space requires a very heavy involvement, deep involvement by governments. If it's about creating infrastructure, if it's about removing failures or market failures, if it's creating the right regulation, and maybe the most important is to set a vision for the future. We all remember the Sputnik era, when your President Kennedy set a vision, men are going to walk on the moon, and America did it. So it is the role of governments to set the vision, and then the entrepreneurs is to take those visions and push those boundaries even further. And today we're definitely going to hear how those Israeli entrepreneurs are pushing those boundaries. It is. I'm really honored to be among the best of the best in this area. And we're going to hear soon from the Israeli Space Agency, a small agency but a very significant one, I believe, and certainly NASA, our friend from NASA, Dr. Jacob Cohen. And we're going to hear about what we call new space technologies. So with this, I want to return it to you. And to congratulate you for getting this all together. Thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing from everybody else.
Thank you. It's fun to have a group of engineers on a webinar because they actually know how to run everything. We're going to start with one of them, Gil Peleg, Senior Advisor on Strategy and International Cooperation at the Israel Space Agency. He got his MBA from Stanford University and also serves in the reserves of the Israel Air Force. So, Gil, you're uniquely situated to sort of obviously tell us about the Israel Space Agency, but you know a thing or two about the connections with the United States and the operations here.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. It's great to be on the call. I want to join Andy in thanking Wayne and team for organizing this great event, and also take the opportunity for thanking Andy for running QB and getting all of the Israeli group behind this conference. Like Wayne said, I'm a senior advisor to the Israeli Space Agency for international cooperation and strategy. Andy said that we're a small agency, so I can say that we're small but feisty. So a few words about Israel in space to sort of set the stage for the companies that we have presenting here. Israel has been very active in the space sector since the 1980s and has some interesting fun facts. It's one of the first countries in the world that developed launch capabilities, and it's actually the only one that launches westbound, which is much more challenging from an engineering standpoint because it launches with the rotation of Earth and not against it. Israel is also the fourth country to reach the moon surface with the Bereshit mission. For those who followed, we reached it a bit too fast than we planned, but our intention is to improve next time. And I guess that Kfir from Space.IL that will be speaking to you later will be saying a bit more about the Bereshit 2 mission. We're super excited about it, and we plan to reach the moon again in 2024, together with a lot of international partners, the US amongst them. Israel is also the first country to have the private astronaut mission. Some might call it space tourism, but Mr. Eitan Stiba recently announced that he will be flying to the International Space Station. Although his flight itself is privately funded through Eitan and the Ramon Foundation, Eitan donated his time on board the International Space Station to support education, to support science, to support commercial innovation of startups. And in essence, his contribution is not only making this very important resource of the International Space System, Station more affordable, but he's also helping us cut the queue in getting important things on board. And Jacob from NASA, that's on the conference as well, is supporting us significantly in the process. So, as you all probably know, we at Israel take a great pride in our entrepreneurial spirit. It was and still is the beating heart behind what we do and how we're able to have big strides forward in the space industry. It's important to understand, or maybe I can say that what was new to me when I got into the space agency and got more familiar with what's happening in terms of innovation in space, it's taking many different forms in recent years. It can range from developing better and more economic ways of getting out there to space. Everyone knows, what SpaceX is doing and other companies that are trying to lower the cost and increase the efficiency of getting to space through different applications for data that we collect on Earth and how we can get better insights to what's happening here on the ground. Technologies that can help us stay in space for longer and embark on long expeditions, and also ways to leverage a zero gravity environment in space to produce better projects and return them back to Earth in order to leverage them. In these days, Andy said that there is a race for technology, but at the same time, we're witnessing how strong the power of international cooperation is. It enables us to bring nations together around a certain narrative of space. It also enables us to leverage resources. And here at Israel, through partnering with a number of nations, the U.S. among them, we can really swing above our weight and push the envelope further and further time and again. The U.S. naturally and specifically NASA have always been Israel's closest ally and an outstanding partner in making our dreams a reality. So, I mean, without being too exhaustive, I'll leave it to the different teams to showcase what they do. Hopefully, it will spark the imagination for part of you in the audience. I hope that you enjoy the presentations, and naturally, feel free to contact myself or any of the other participants through the organizers of the event. Enjoy.
Thanks,
Back to you,
Gil.
Wayne.
I think in addition to the distinction of being perhaps the most feisty of the agencies, when you announced your moonshot, you also won the Chutzpah Award for having the biggest dreams, having the biggest ambitions. And I know that there's a lot of competition for that in Israel. Dr. Jacob Cohen, Chief Scientist of NASA Ames Research Center. You advise on all areas of science, which I imagine at a large operation like NASA means you got to advise on a lot of different issues. Your background is clearly one of distinction, a doctorate in molecular science from molecular evolution from NYU and a postdoc at Cedars-Sinai. Please share from your perspective what it's been like to work as a scientist with technologists on such big, ambitious projects.
So first, thank you, Wayne, for the great introduction. Thank you for the American-Israel Friendship League for hosting this. It is really a pleasure to be here with a team of colleagues that you have here. They are really impressive, what they have done and accomplished, both from a diplomatic sense all the way to technology and science development. Lastly, I do want to thank the audience who is actually taking the time to listen to us and provide inputs to us also, because you never know where the next new idea will come from. So I really do appreciate it. I will start with really looking at the top level, and then maybe I'll go a little bit into what I do and the scenario across there. I think, and I think the agency NASA believes that you know, collaboration and international collaboration specific is really critical and important for expansion of both space exploration and space utilization. I will add that it is also important for humanity as a whole. Space is quite a unique environment. You know, at first, when we started going to space, it was done for defensive reasons, Sputnik, as you heard before. And now we're in a new era in there. While countries typically first look at space for their own utilization, you quickly realize that really to maximize the output that you could get from this new frontier, collaborations is needed. It doesn't matter whether you're a big country, quote unquote, or a small country. These are all perspectives depending on how you analyze it. Collaborations is significant. Space is really a unique environment. In any area that you look at, we utilize it now on a daily basis for our survival. Even with COVID, we're using it continuously for this. So space obviously is integral to what we're doing. NASA invested a lot in space and obviously invested in the International Space Station, a research facility for international collaboration. International collaboration and includes policies, all the way from that, all the way down to looking at molecules and what happens in space. We plan to go to the moon, and we're working straightforward to that. We have vehicles that are being tested. We have rovers that are being planned. But again, it's not done independently. It's done with collaborations from nations across the globe. Anything that we do when we look at planets, go to asteroids, go to Mars, all of those have international component in it. So it's critical. Now, when you look at space, there are lots of things that are yet unknown. Even in businesses, we don't know what new business will use that space environment. So you see a lot of businesses using traditional things and moving them into space, but that's just the beginning of what will occur there. Now, our history with Israel has been long, as you heard. We've been working with Israel for quite a while. Israel is unique in a certain stance because they've developed things. You learned about the launcher that they have. Well, the launcher could only carry a small payload. At the beginning, you could see that as a negative, but it becomes a positive when you have to start designing things that fit into small areas that require small powers and are able to do amazing things. So Israel is in partnership with us both on the commercial side, but also government to government. We have tested radiation protection material that comes from Israel, and look forward to additional collaborations, whether it's scientific payloads, policy, commercial entities, technology development. There's more to it, obviously. I will say that the fun part of it, and what's really critical about collaboration, is the personal interaction. You know, you can't collaborate if you're not a friend with the other side, if you can't be feeling their needs and what they need across there. And so our collaboration comes from that friendship that develops. And that friendship sits through policy difficulties of making things go. And sometimes it takes years to get a project to work together. But if the friendship is there, it will happen. So hopefully you'll see that in the panel, and I will stop here. You really have a great panel set up today.
Dr. Cohen, what a great sort of distillation of what friendship is about. First of all, it takes time. It happens over a period of time, and it requires collaboration. So thanks for that perspective. It's really a very valuable one to set up for the panelists that I'll now introduce. So we've heard it requires government. We've heard we need technologists. We understand we need scientists that are helping guide what it is going into space, and we need collaboration. But without entrepreneurs, without people who are trying to develop what these payloads and what kind of activity is going to happen, you know, you sort of have an empty vessel. So we have this amazing panel now of 4 different entrepreneurs. Some of them are commercial projects that benefit all of humanity. Others are social entrepreneurship projects and educational projects that benefit future generations that we hope to interest in becoming a workforce for these new opportunities and new horizons in space. We're going to start now with Yossi Yamin. He's the founder of Space Pharma. As Dr. Cohen referred to, we're in a period now where there's a lot of attention on development of new pharmaceuticals and the need for some of those to happen in speed that we've not really focused on before. Yossi describes himself as a new space entrepreneur. That term's been used before. We're going to have to find out, hopefully, what an old space entrepreneur is versus a new space entrepreneur. Hopefully, through the course of this panel, we'll get there. I know, Yossi, you prepared for us an introductory video presentation here, so we're going to start with that by way of introduction, and then have you come in and explain to us about Space Pharma.
Kindly go, Wayne.
Sometimes in training, I feel like I've given it all, that it's as far as I can get. But then, on the big stage, with all the lights, all eyes on me, suddenly I feel like a second push, like I could fly. I'm unleashed. And it all comes down to one simple thing, your environment. If you change the environment of your experience, you might be able to change its outcome. It could actually be a universal thing. What if every challenge, every research was simply done in a different, limitless environment, say in space? Space has indeed already brought revolutions in telecommunications, transport, astronomy, observation of the Earth. What about health? Could, for example, pharmaceutical, medical, biotechnological experience done in space and monitored from Earth bring unparalleled, incredible results? That's what Space Pharma does. It's a game changer.
Space Pharma is pioneering the development and exploitation of high-performance remote-controlled miniaturized laboratories flying in microgravity on satellites and space stations. For the pharmaceutical industry, Space Pharma is fostering accelerated new medical drug discovery and preclinical trial and new vaccines through improved space-grown crystals of proteins. In cosmetics, Space Pharma supports the discovery of new anti-aging compounds using skin-on-chip in microgravity for accelerated skin aging process. It also uses hair follicle tissue as a model for impaired hair growth and accelerated testing of hair care agents and medications. For the food industry, it increases production of lipid antioxidants from microalgae in microgravity for nutritional food and dietary supplements. It provides the biotechnology industry with an advanced laboratory for stem cell proliferation, while keeping full differentiation capability for neurons extension and for discovering new gene expression profiles, which have no counterpart on Earth. It helps develop 3D tissue regeneration and stem cell therapy for the medical domain. Even more, Space Pharma develops the first ever factory in space for advanced and unique drug and cell production in collaboration with health institutes and industries.
Health innovations will never be the same. So don't just give your projects a boost. Give them wings.
Space Pharma, working in space for health on Earth.
Thank you, Wayne, for this great intro. And I would like to say a few things about your eyes. When I see your eyes brightening and explaining this topic to the nice audience today, I would like to say thank you for the opportunity, along with our friends from the Israeli Foreign Ministry Office, as well as the Israeli Space Agency. But I think that the friendship that mentioned by Jacob is all behind Space Pharma. When I met Jacob for the first time, he came to Israel. It was before one of the Ramon Foundation events, and I had to take a car and to pick him from the hotel at Herzliya. He came with Dr. Pete Warden, the NASA Ames director. And I thought to myself, what are we going to do? I found a nice gentleman, Jacob Cohen, and a nice Irish guy. And I thought to myself, let's drink a wine together, and I'll tell them the story about Space Pharma. And I'm very happy to meet those nice both friends, and to give them the credit that I established Space Pharma immediately after discussing with them how fruitful space domain can be for Earth and other destinations. So thank you, Jacob, and thank you, NASA, for this. Since we established the company, we found that there is a lot of interest for people to understand microgravity, actually to remove the impact of gravity or our life. And we, as a very delicate, maybe lucrative entity, propose something which is unmanned, a delicate miniaturized laboratory that since we start to launch them to orbit, we accomplished 5 missions. 2 of them are autonomous within our CubeSat, holding experiments for clients, and 3 within the ISS, together with our friends from Space Florida and NASA. Tomorrow, I'm very happy to inform you that we are going to close a circle where medical doctors from the Sheba Tel HaShomer Hospital in Israel are going to inject antibiotics against virulent bacteria in orbit. I can tell you that every day we are collecting data from orbit. What is the useful or the beauty by having bacteria in orbit? What is the hazard things that we need to take care of, and how to prevent from those bacterial virulence on other destinations or within spacecrafts that will lead us to other planets. So the system that we provide, we build it for all people here on Earth. The mankind should use it. Either those are students at the STEM classes, commercial entities that would like to use it as a purpose of revenue generation, scientists that are gathering together from Europe, United States, Israel, and now we heard about UAE and other people at the Gulf are participating and would like to join our happy roundtable and to discuss how to make life here on Earth much better. So the system developed by 12 people. Right now, as I told you, we accomplished 5 missions. We know how to handle anti-aging, longevity, some kinds of antibiotics and bacteria, of course, as well as many other flow chemistry techniques that provide better medicine, better food, and better life here on Earth.
Amen.
Amen.
That's an amazing mission and amazing way to sort of introduce one of the very specific applications of space exploration in your field. I want to move to our next panelist just to make sure we get everybody in, and then hopefully have time to come back to you, Yossi, after. So Daniel Rockberger, the founder of NSL.com, is trying to change the way that we communicate around the world. That seems like a pretty ambitious, chutzpahdik sort of a goal. And I know you started out from modest beginnings as a rocketry student as well, just sort of understanding, putting things into orbit at a young age. And as you grew your career, studying mechanical engineering at the Technion, and then later doing graduate work in Strasbourg, France, at the International Space University, where you now teach annually. You've now expanded and moved into new fields of communications that perhaps when you were launching those rockets didn't even exist at the time. So please tell us a little bit about your venture.
Great. Can we start with the video?
Yes, please.
Okay, we'll start with the video.
Dish. So you see here a small satellite with a large dish. Usually, a large dish requires a large, costly satellite. We overcame this.
Can you start from the beginning?
Into the satellite and only deploying it in space. This is how the antenna opens in orbit. Now it can be used to communicate with airplanes, ships, or anything below the satellite. It can also provide IoT communication for applications such as agriculture or asset tracking. Next, I want to show you where we measure the antenna performance, how we simulate the entire link between Earth and our satellite. Follow me. Welcome to our anechoic chamber. The triangles you see here on the walls are visible to our eyes, but to our antennas, they're not visible. They actually create the void of space. The entire system can measure the antenna performance at a distance that is equivalent to almost 1,000 kilometers between Earth and our antenna. In this room, in this small room.
Rocket science, huh? Let's continue with our tour. This is Shirley. She is our microwave engineer. She works on simulation equations and all kinds of sophisticated projects, as you can see. Hi guys.
Hi.
This is Daniel. Daniel is our co-founder and chief engineer. Daniel, can you tell us what we're seeing here?
So this is our ground station from which we communicate with our satellites. We know at every given time where our satellites are. And as you can see, our first satellite is coming overhead in just a few minutes. With our ground tracking antenna, we communicate with the antenna in space and provide broadband communication.
Do you want to see the real cool stuff here? Come with me to our antenna assembly room. Thank you for being with us. Remember, in space, the sky is the lower limit.
Great, thanks. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so thanks. My name is Daniel, and I hope the movie portrayed what we're trying to do. And basically, when I was working in Israeli aerospace industries, which I worked there for 9 years, working on large satellites, we kind of recognized the problem that large communication satellites have, is which, as was explained in the video, a big communication satellite is basically a dish in space. And there's a problem because you have to, of course, build a big satellite for a big dish, and you have to make it strong and rigid because so it withstands the launch. And we came up with an idea on how to make that antenna, instead of being rigid, to make it flexible and have a shape memory antenna that can fold up in a really origami kind of way, and be very small in the satellite during launch and then deploy in space. What this mainly does is reduces the manufacturing costs and the launch costs, and makes you get by with a much smaller satellite. So that's what we did. And it's funny because we're sitting here with Yossi from Space Pharma and Kfir from Space.IL, and I think all of us kind of started around the same time, and all of us also had talks with each other on how to help each other. Maybe Yossi will fly his first experiment on my satellite, and maybe I'll help Space.IL in their first design. We were all interacted together, and 7, 8, 9 years later, we've all reached kind of milestones, which I think we should, we can all be quite proud of. But again, if we talk about US, the US is about 80% of the satellite market in the world. And any small space company, startup, wants to have its eyes on the US because that's where the market is, the commercial market, the defense market, and the exploration market if it's NASA. So we don't have much of an existence if we don't collaborate with the US. So we are always looking for collaboration with companies. NSLCom has just partnered with a big, a small company, but a big successful company in small satellites in the US, York. And we're always looking for opportunities in the US to collaborate, to introduce our solutions together with US companies, if it's again to the DoD or NASA or commercial. We, for example, have just signed an agreement with the town of Yuma in Arizona to demonstrate digital agriculture with our new satellite next year, which means collecting data from agriculture sensors in the fields and then sending it back, doing some analytics on the data and sending it back to the farmers or the machinery owners. So we are looking at all different kind of use cases with our satellite. Basically, our nanosatellites with this antenna provide between 100 and 500 times faster communication links than any other satellite of the same size. So that's the difference in communications that we provide. Just a bit of a history. Can you show the picture I sent you before? So we started with, when me and my partner were working with IAI, we had a need to doing our own thing. So we started our own company, the first company before NSLCom. It was called NSL Satellites. And we started doing different projects. One of them was sending experiments to the space station. We did this by ourselves. We were teaching students in the class and sending the experiments to the space station. And now it's become the Raman Foundation Space Lab course. And this, I was asleep at home one night. One of my experiments of one of the schools in Israel was on the station. And this is Sunita Williams, one of the best, I think, NASA astronauts. And I got a call from Houston saying, Daniel, we have a problem. Usually it's Houston, we have a problem. It's saying, Daniel, we have a problem. Sunita is trying to release your experiment, and there was a little glass tube in the plastic tube, and she wasn't able to crack it and mix the materials. And I would say, this is literally, Daniel, we have a problem. I was like, what do you want me to do? What advice can I give the astronaut on the station. I didn't want her to bend it this far. She could have broken it and all the materials would start floating around the station. But in the end, it was okay. So, and for someone, my mum always used to call me Little Daniel. So for Little Daniel to be able to understand what it means to send an experiment to space station, to collaborate with the US company, it was NanoAx in this case, to actually send something to the station and bring it back to Earth and do science, is something that, you know, I never dreamed I could do with my little company of 2 people. And now we have 20 people. We've raised more than $15 million. It's just about starting small and growing step by step.
Well, I want to echo one of the comments that we received of many from this one from Sigal, saying, we love your tagline, in space, the sky's the lower limit. And indeed, that's also a great segue to the next venture we're going to hear about. Yuval Lorig is the R&D manager at Util Corp. And he has both his BA and his MA from Ben-Gurion University in various aspects of remote sensing and remote sensors. So Yuval, tell us a little bit about what we're able to see from space that maybe could really matter a lot.
Hi everybody, thanks Wayne, and thanks for inviting us. I'll just share my screen quickly. I think we got it. Yep. Is it showing up? No.
Not yet.
One last chance. Okay, should be fine right now, right? Okay, so I'll quickly introduce Utilis. Among these great technologies that are showcasing over here, so Utilis is actually utilizing Earth observation satellites in order to gain insights back on Earth and actionable insights. We're a data company. We're producing data for mainly the infrastructure industries. So basically we're working with an Earth observation satellite. It's a radar satellite and 630 kilometers above Earth. And we're localizing and locating issues right like that. And that's not the next slide. So in order to assemble it all together to our discussion, it's actually quite interesting because the trigger for the Utilis venture started with other space exploration programs, especially for Mars programs, but also for other extraterrestrial planets. And basically the search for water on Mars triggered how can we use similar wavelengths from similar satellites and apply them back on Earth. And that was in order to find leaks for water utilities. And so we began working with SAR. SAR is synthetic aperture radar. There's several SAR satellites. Most of them are belongs to the space agencies. We work mainly with the Japanese Space Agency and the Argentinian one. And the reason we did this is because SAR is an imaging device that can be used 24 hours at nighttime in different weather. There's no clouds. If you use the right wavelength, it can even penetrate the Earth's surface and detect different materials and objects. And I'll try to show how we're utilizing them with our image processing algorithms. So just to give you a glimpse of the extent, that's a SAR imagery. You probably recognize this area. It's quite vast, and that's the power for remote sensing, because we can actually analyze all the different locations just around this area, whether we are trying to find water leaks or instabilities with railways and roadways, or trying to help agriculture with some soil moisture analysis. So from that imagery, we are eventually running our algorithms and detecting water leaks on the specific pipes, in this case of San Francisco water. And eventually we're delivering those insights to the water utilities. And quickly, just to show how leaks look alike, I think it's pretty cool to understand you can detect this from space. So where this guy is standing, that's in Ferrara in Italy, there's a leak underneath this asphalt, okay? When they uncover it, it looks like this. I've got hundreds of footages like this. I'll share another one from Melbourne. And they located the leak, and eventually we find even just such a small leaks like those. Or we can also find mega leaks that nobody thought that thought how to find them. That's an example in Hilton Head and in the US, where we found a leak estimated already to spend $1.5 million for the water utility. It was in a tidal area where nobody thought to approach. Funny enough, it could be viewable from Google Earth. Okay, that's how we assess eventually how long this leak occurred. And since the utility estimated it for $500,000 per year, $500,000 loss, so that's why it's a 1.5 million leak. So that's just another example. We did not detect it on Google Earth. It was detected with the radars. And just wrapping it up, we are also trying to help prevent with proactive maintenance such events like this. In this case, those are two very deadly events, one in Italy a few years ago, and this one recently in August in the UK, where 3 people died from a very small landslip that derailed a fast train from the rail in Scotland. Or similar cases like this with the roads. And we do this by analyzing the soil moisture and recognizing where the hazards for those infrastructure companies. We're working with several of them around the world and trying to prevent those kind of events. Wrapping it up with the common UN SDGs. Some of you might know about them. So this is the UN goals for sustainable development goals. So Utilis basically helps with the SDG number 6 for clean water and sanitation, with innovating for the infrastructure industry, zero hunger, because we're also trying to assist agriculture with gaining insights from their soil moisture activity. And eventually we are also assisting with the climate action and the climate resiliency. Finding leaks is actually saving a lot of power. And that's it pretty much. We are also, just to get it back to our discussion, so Utilis is right now actually an Israeli company, but also a US company. We have our own offices in San Diego, and we have a lot of work in the US these days.
Well, we love joint ventures here at America-Israel Friendship League that involve both the Sechel and common bonds between the United States and Israel. Actually, it's a great also segue to our next speaker, Kfir Damari, one of the co-founders of Space.IL. I'll just share as an anecdote. When we woke up and heard about Israel's moonshot with Bereshit, it actually inspired this entire webinar series. My colleague, Jonathan Bar-Sadeh, the president of our board, very quickly helped us develop the technology to have our very first webinar about Bereshit, and what has evolved for us as a way of connecting and communicating with people really all over the world about the collaborations really came out, was an additional aspect of what I guess Kfir has defined as the Bereshit effect, which is our next wave of trying to impact on the next generation of students that need to study STEM in order to be able to have and to develop further. So we've developed a program called YATI, Youth Ambassador Technology Exchange, which is seeking to connect and twin high schools in the United States and in Israel to study together, and then to do what the Israeli Space Agency and schools have started to do, which is to launch microsatellites into space. But we've not tried it as a joint venture yet, and that's part of our dream and our vision, very much inspired by Bereshit. So Kfir, tell us a little bit about what it's like to be the 4th country on the planet to go into lunar orbit, and tell us about your plans for helping to continue to create this Bereshit effect across the entire country.
Thank you. First of all, it's amazing to hear other aspects of the Bereshit effect, and also to thank you for the honor of being here and to see how many people from different backgrounds and from so many places around the world are with us. I will share in the next few minutes the story of Space.IL and the story of Bereshit. 1 second. Here it is. Okay. 1 second. And we go. Okay. So first of all, Space.IL is a nonprofit organization that believes that through big challenges, we can inspire the next generation of both engineers and scientists, but also dreamers. We were founded, I had the honor of founding Space.IL in 2011. And of course, our first project is Bereshit, that after so many years eventually was launched in February 2019, reached the moon and made history on April 4th, and eventually a week later even touched the lunar surface a bit faster than we expected, but did that. And really the story of Bereshit is a story of a small country, a small nation with big dreams that went all the way to the moon. But through that journey also inspired really the next generation and paved the way for future space exploration, I believe, in Israel, but also in other places around the world. And I will tell you how it started for me. For me, it's actually started when a friend of mine, Kol Yariv, wrote on Facebook that he wanted to open the Israeli team competing in the Google Lunar X Prize. I told him, if you're serious, I'm in, and this is how we started. I always like to say 3 engineers sitting in a bar. It sounds like a joke, but this is how the story of the first Israeli spacecraft started.
Here, just so you know, that we're not seeing anything yet on the screen.
Okay. Try it again, sorry. Let's do it like this and just continue if it won't work. Now you see it?
I can see 3 guys having a beer.
Exactly. So this is how the story started, with 3 engineers in a bar.
That's all it takes.
Exactly. Eventually you need some pizza and some other stuff to eat, but this is how it starts.
Okay, the webinar's over. You gave away the secret sauce.
You don't know what was on the pizza, so that's something else. But I will tell you, we don't have a lot of time, but I will tell you that we started from a really small design, 10 on 10 on 30 centimeters, and the spacecraft became much, 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 much bigger. It's the first design was around 5 kilos. Eventually, we got a 585 kilos, and instead of a small bottle, we got a really big table. But still, it's still the smallest spacecraft that was designed and sent, and it was sent to land on the lunar surface. So it's still rather small, and it uses the same technology that were mentioned before. Israel has capabilities to build really small satellites, but we just took it to the next level. It's not a satellite, it's a spacecraft. But the story of Space.IL is not just a story about technology and the spacecraft itself. It's a story about people. And this is a picture taken in 2011 with an event with Shimon Peres, the Israeli president back then, and Ron Ramon. And most of the people you see here in the picture are volunteers, because this is how it started. And in the front, you can also see Maurice Kahn, our biggest donor. He donated more than $47 million to the project. But it's not just him. We had the support, of course, of the Israeli Space Agency, and the Israeli aerospace industry is our biggest partner. And beside them,
the slide is not moving, so we still see you drinking beer.
Okay. So I'm still drinking beer, so I'll just move to this. And I will say that beside Maurice, the Edison family donated more than $23 million, and other donors like the Schusterman and Adams and Segol and the academia in Israel and commercial sponsors and many, many more that joined in to help us get to the point that we have a working spacecraft and we can launch it all the way to the moon. And, you know, I always mention the big donors, but it's important to me to mention also the smaller donors. And for example, that we had one donor, a kid from the States, and we're getting to Hanukkah, and he actually donated the $18 he got to Hanukkah so that Israel can reach the moon. So really we have to say a lot of thank you to all those people, the big, the small, all the engineers that joined in and help us to get to the point that we can eventually launch the spacecraft and get to the moon. And we'll jump forward and we'll try to show you this picture, hopefully. You see it?
Yes.
This is one of our famous picture of the spacecraft next to the lunar surface with the Israeli flag, Am Yisrael Chai, and small country big dreams. Two interesting things about this picture. One thing is that the only reason we could get this picture is because the cooperation we had with NASA that allowed us to use the Deep Space Network. And eventually through that network, we're able to have a bandwidth that is high enough so we can get images while we were descending. But also this is a $1 million picture because when the X Prize saw it, although the competition officially ended, they decided to give us $1 million as a Moonshot Award. But I think that, you know, if we're looking back to the story of Space.IL, and of course, you know how it ended. It was mentioned here a few times. We did reach the moon, but in a higher speed than expected. But if we look at, you know, the achievements of the project, it made Israel the 4th country in the world to touch the lunar surface, the 7th country in the world to reach the moon. It was the first private non-governmental mission. But I think that the biggest impact for this mission was the inspiration for the next generation. We've met through hundreds of volunteers that went into classrooms. We've met more than 2 million kids, half of them in Israel, half of them abroad, mainly in the US. And I think we got them inspired and allowed them to realize that this story is not just about solar panels and engines. It's a lot about creativity and resilience and teamwork and overcoming so many obstacles, and of course about dreaming. And what we were aiming to do is to make sure that they will be able to continue dreaming. And this is what we call the Bereshit effect that you've mentioned, because this is basically our goal, that people will dream, but not just dream, but will make it happen, just like you had a dream and you've made it happen. So this is what we want to do. And to finalize my talk, I will mention that now we started working on Bereshit 2 mission. And the goal was to find a mission that will be exciting, just as Bereshit 1. We didn't want to do the same mission, just change the last 5 minutes. And we've worked hard. And I think we found that mission, and hopefully really, really soon, we'll be able to share you more things about it. But as Gil mentioned, we were hoping to create a collaboration, international cooperation. And of course, we're looking at NASA as one of the major partner here. And I will also share with you the fact that we're planning to create a Bereshit effect, but on a global scale. And this is one of the things we're planning to do in the next mission. We just started, I think we're close to finalizing the story, and we'll be able to share it soon. And we started to work on that.
Okay, wow. So I've got a lot of questions. We're not going to hit them all, but I'll try to get as many as we can in. So maybe short answers. I'm going to go back up to the top, I think, to Gil and Jacob. A few questions about the future hot topics in the space industry There's a question from Stefan about large launcher vehicles, or whether those could be, there will be a demand for smaller launcher vehicles. Perhaps one of you could take that on.
I'll defer to Jacob on technology, respectfully.
Okay, let me say a few things. Obviously, large vehicles are important for going back to the moon, both commercial and the NASA-based large vehicles, as you can see from our moon program is going. Small launchers are really critical. You're seeing that as part of the development of new space to allow payloads to go up, various, and return across there. So I see that demand. There are multiple areas that are really hot topics, right? If you're looking far into space, the search for life is really big, and the search for water. But if you're looking at human space exploration, the concept of space tourism, resource utilization of the moon, potentially also development of other types of resources that could be used back on Earth. So it's quite a big list, and we don't have enough time to go through it. That probably requires another talk at another point, but quick and to the point.
Well, you did great because you answered a bunch of the questions that people were asking about, or you at least mentioned some of the topics. Gil, what do you see as the next hot topics, and can you tell us anything about the next Israeli astronaut who is scheduled to go into space?
Ooh, two different but yet very exciting topics. I'd say that part of the things that we're focusing now in Israel, and it sort of rose bottom up, is different technologies and capabilities for sustainability in space, meaning understanding that humanity is looking to go further into deep space and also to stay longer on the moon and elsewhere. We have a number of Israeli companies that are supporting these endeavors. One example would be Stemrad that developed a protective vest that's currently actually on board the International Space Station. The essence behind it is that astronauts in space are exposed to significantly higher levels of radiation, and this is supposed to protect them. We have companies that are working on 3D printing of meat, which is also applicable in space and will enable astronauts to actually make their own food in zero gravity, and much more. So that is at least out of the enormous amounts of things to do, that's one niche that we're putting a spotlight on and trying to develop our comparative advantage within Israel. So that would be on that. Regarding the second astronaut in space, I think we're all super excited. I think it's a terrific mission. I think that if you would look beyond Israel, which for us naturally, after the tragedy of Ilan Ramon, having our national flag on someone's shoulder being up there again is terrific. This is the first private astronaut mission that's going to the International Space Station. I assume that more private astronauts will join even this launch, but still, this is a major step, I mean, globally. And we have one of our own in Israeli being in front line and center. And I think that what's amazing about what Eitan is doing in the Ramon Foundation is taking this private endeavor and trying to make the most out of it for the broader public. And that's where we're chipping in and jumping on board, both from the Israeli Space Agency. Jacob on the call is extremely supportive on NASA's side, and he's also sitting on the board that's going to improve what we do up there. But this is, I think, something to think about in terms of how does a private astronaut contribute back to the community, even though, he's not a government employee. So that's, roughly speaking, happy to pick up any follow-up questions.
Great. Unfortunately, we're at the top of the hour. I am so grateful to each of the entrepreneurs who really stuck by the rules and really gave us a glimpse of their projects, a glimpse of what a laboratory in space might look like, a glimpse at peering into utility sensors from space and how that could have an impact on agriculture, on climate, on food production, on so many critical stages. Andy, I just want to give you one last word before I close out on the significance of what Gil is referring to now, and Andy, of Israel really being in a different league, a different company trying to help all of humanity advance in so many of these different critical areas that were referenced in the Sustainable Development Goals, et cetera. As a diplomat, that must present also a whole new frontier for the state of Israel.
So just two remarks. About 4 weeks ago, the first official visit from the UAE to Israel, we just signed a peace agreement. Gil and I collaborated on organizing a space technology exhibition for the visiting delegation. And one of the outcomes of that is that we're going to sign an agreement, a space agreement between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. So space is not just for the things that you described, space is also promoting peace. So this is one remark. And the second remark goes back to what Jacob described as an essential part, and this is the friendship and the collaboration that is among people. So just the last time I met Jacob in Israel, together with the chief of NASA Ames, we sat over a plate of shakshuka in Tel Aviv. So that I think has made more contribution. That shakshuka dinner made more collaboration for the friendship than a lot of discussions, scientific discussions, and exchanging documents, etc. So at the end of the day, diplomacy is about relationship, is about people, and trying to look at problems and finding solutions. So thank you all. Thank you, Wayne, for hosting this, and it's really, really an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Well, that's a great vision and aspiration for future astronauts that instead of Tang, they can have shakshuka in space, and look forward to that with some new culinary innovation. For those of you that appreciate more terrestrial opportunities for friendship, this coming Sunday, we have a Pilates class being taught live from both Tel Aviv and New York. So if you want to join us, if you have aspirations to be an astronaut, you need to be in good shape. So please feel free to join us on Sunday at noon for a live co-hosted Pilates session. Thanks everyone for being with us. This truly was an inspiring episode, and we're grateful for all of you taking a midday break to be with us.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you everybody.
Thank you, Wayne.
Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.